Bright Duty. Every student matters.
Hi everybody, welcome back to the history class. So today we are going to look at chapter 7. Now this chapter is called Nomadic Empires. Now if you remember the last two chapters, we read about the two great empires in Europe and in Middle East. Now this nomadic empires, this chapter is also about another great empires in the history. Now this empire was formed by nomadic people, okay, the Mongols. Alright, so this chapter we are going to learn about the Mongols and how they formed their empire and what was nomadic empires. Alright, and the period of this formation or period of this nomadic empire, it falls from 13th to 14th, 13th to 14th century. Alright. Now first, when we look at the term nomadic empire, there are two separate terms. One is nomadic, the other is an empire. Now we have been learning about an empire, right? The Roman Empire, the Arab Empire. Now what is nomadic? So now we'll look at the nature of what nomadic is, nature of nomads, or what constitutes nomadic, okay? So here we have to understand that these two terms are contradictory to each other. Okay, they do not go along with each other. They are kind of opposite to each other. All right, because when we talk about nomadic, it basically relates to the people who are nomads, right? And who are nomads? Nomads are those people who are essentially wanderers. They move from one place to another, but their movements are organized in family groups. Okay. They just don't go wandering about, but they wander in an organized way with their families and with their clans. All right. And in the nomads society, the economic system is unsystematic. Okay. And it is primitive in nature. The economic system, the economic organization, and the political organization, they are unsystematic, they're not systematic, and they're also primitive. Okay, they're not modern. Primitive is opposite of modern. Alright, modern, by modern it means advanced, progressive, but primitive, not modern, not progressive. Okay, so in nomadic society, all right, their system of economy and politics is polity is primitive and unsystematic. All right, but on the other hand, if we come to the term empire, now by empire we have seen how an empire is an organized system of government, right? So in the empire, okay, we get a sense of the location, the area of control of the emperor, of the ruler over a vast territory or over a certain extent of land. Okay, so there is a proper limit. Okay, there is a proper boundary, there is a proper location of that particular area under which area which is ruled by the emperor, okay, which constitutes the empire. When we think of an empire, we think of a territory which has proper limits. Its limits are boundaries. All right, and it has proper location. It does not move from one place to another. It is properly located. All right, and bounded. All right, on all its sides. Now in empires, the polity is stable, it's systematic. Okay, so the empires are politically stable. It is not unsystematic like that of the nomadic societies or empires. Okay, now the empire, it derives its stability. How does empire become stability? Because of the complex social and economic structures and the government, okay, that that looks after the territorial dominion, that looks after the entire territory and the land under the control and authority of the emperor within that empire. Okay. So here we can see the difference between the nomadic empire and the nomadic nature. Alright, nature of the nomads and what empire constitutes. Now, nomads are wanderers, they move around in organized groups, alright, and they do not have systematic political and economic system. But empires have proper definition of their territory and limit of the territory, and they have systematic and stable political and economic system, okay, which allows them, which enables them to govern their people and territory properly. Okay. Now, if you look at these two terms and how they are different from one another, so we can see that they are quite contradictory to each other. Okay. However, these two were brought together by nomadic people. Okay. The idea of how they were nomads, but how they established an empire. Okay, how they constructed imperial formations. All right, so that is an interesting development in history. Okay, so although the terms empire and nomadic may not be true or may not fall into place for for explanation of nomadic empire according to its definition and basic idea, but however, despite that, okay, the nomadic empires formed in the history. All right. So in this chapter, we'll study about the formation of such empires, formation of nomadic empires which were established or founded by nomadic groups, groups who were nomads, who wandered, okay, in organized family groups or clans. All right. So about 3000 BC, okay, the vast region, the vast area from today, present day Central Asia to Korean Peninsula. So the region today, if you look at the map in the atlas, so the region from Central Asia, today's present day Central Asia, to the Korean Peninsula in the east, and from the forest of Siberia to the valleys of Yellow River in China, this was inhabited by a number of nomadic tribes. Okay, they breeded animals. Okay, they did animal husbandry as a way to earn livelihood. Okay, so these tribes lived in this vast area which stretched from Central Asia in west to Korean Peninsula in east, and from the forest of Siberia in north to the Yellow River in south. All right. Now these nomadic tribes, they were Buddhist. Okay, they followed Buddhism. Okay, and they were dominated by Mongolian speaking people and had their own cultural identity. Now these nomadic tribes, they belong to different tribes. Okay, so they followed a religion which is Buddhism. Okay, so Buddhism is what they followed, they practiced, but in these tribes, they were dominated by Mongolian speaking people. Okay, most of the tribes spoke Mongolian and they had their own cultural identity. Okay, they had their own traditions, they had their own customs according to the different tribes. Okay, now the formation of the Mongolian nomadic culture. Okay, how their culture was formed with living together with different tribes in this vast tract of area from stretching from Central Asia to Peninsula. There are three different steps which tells us about the development of the Mongolian nomadic culture, the formation of the Mongolian nomadic culture. So what are these three different steps of development? First is the early period of nomadism, okay, where there was struggle for dominance of that area by the Turks and the Mongol tribes, okay. The second is the period of unified Mongolian state. Okay, and the third was the adoption of Buddhism. Okay, so these three steps are the steps which will tell us about the formation of the nomadic empire and its culture. Okay. Now, the formation of nomadic empires, it starts from the 3rd millennium BC and then goes on to the 12th century AD. Okay, so 3rd millennium BC is 3000 BC to 12th century AD. All right, so between it took this long period. Okay, this was the period in which the formation of nomadic empires took place. Now, during this period, great steppes in Central Asia was inhabited by the tribes of Mongol and Turk origin. Okay, so during this period, the area, great steppes, they were inhabited by tribes who were of Mongol origin, and there were other tribes who were of Turk or Turkish origin. Okay, they were coexisting and struggling for dominance over the region. So both these tribes were fighting with each other as they lived alongside each other for dominance over this area, which is great steppes. Okay. In the 3rd century BC, the Hunas established their hegemony over the region, thus laying the foundation of the Mongolian nomadic culture. And finally, in the 3rd century BC, the Hunas were successful in establishing their control over this region, and with that, they laid the foundation of the nomadic culture. Okay, Mongolian nomadic culture. Now, the Mongols were composed of diverse body of people. Mongols were not same kind of people belonging to the same tribe. They came from diverse groups of people belonging to different tribes. Okay. Now, the only similarities between them was language. Okay, so they were linked by the similarities of language to the Tartars, Khitan, Manchus to the east, and the Turks to the west. Okay, so there were different people who were Tartars, Khitans, and Manchus of the east, and Turks of the west, but they were different, belonging to different tribes. But the only link between them was language. They were linked by language because they spoke similar languages. Okay, some of the Mongols, they reared cattle. Okay, while others, they were food gatherers and hunters. Okay, they nomadized in steppes of Central Asia. So they moved in the Central Asia area to rear their cattle or to hunt and gather food. Okay, this area, this great steppes where they lived, where they formed the Mongolian culture, nomadic culture. All right, this area was surrounded, okay, ringed by snow-capped Altai mountains in the west, arid Gobi desert in the south, and myriad springs from melting snows of hills in the north and the west. Okay, so it was bounded by all these mountains, desert, and hills. Okay. Now, apart from being bounded by hills and mountains, they also had pastures of land which were lush green. Okay, they were quite fertile and they were lush with green grasses. And in good season, they also engaged in small games, okay, among the tribal people. The hunter and gatherers, they wandered in the northern region and made a living from trade in furs of animals. Okay, so the hunters and gatherers, they went to the northern region of this area and they made a living by trading the animals or animal products that they reared, like furs, milk, dairy, meat, etc. Okay, and in the pastures, which were lush green. Okay, those pastures, in those pastures, they cultivated crops, but the cultivation was only for a short period of time in a year. So they did not cultivate the for the entire year. Okay, they only cultivated, say, for one season or for a very short period of time. Okay. Uh, but one thing which was very common, apart from language between all these tribes, there was scarcity of sources. People did not have plenty of sources like food, other stuff, okay, which they required for their daily livelihood. They did not have enough. So there was scarcity of sources, all right? The society of the Mongolian nomadic culture was divided into patrilineal lineages. That means the males in the family were the head. Okay, they were superior, or it was the father who was the head of the family. All right, and then after the demise of the father, then it would be that position would be given to another male. Say, for example, the oldest son. All right. Now, the rich families from this area, they possessed more animals and more pasture lands as well. Okay, so those who were rich, they had more animals and more pasture lands as well. And along with that, they were also very influential in the local politics, in the local development of power and governance. Okay. Now, the periodic natural calamities like harsh cold winters and droughts led to the conflicts among the families over pasture lands and predatory raids in search of livestock. Now, because these groups of nomadic tribes, they lived they lived in an area which experienced harsh cold winters and also droughts during the summers. So because of these natural calamities and because of how they did not have enough sources, okay, enough food, enough livestock, enough land, or enough access to land and animals, etc., or other sources, people fought with each other. Okay, people also raided the other families' farm areas or livestock. Okay, they stole the animals, they stole the resources from the rich families, and they also fought with those who had enough animals or livestock or pastures for cultivation. Okay, and this kind of fight, this kind of conflicts among different families, different groups of the nomadic tribes, it happened quite often because the sources were very little. Okay. Now, the Mongol nomadic tribes, they had achieved in the field of technology as well. They have made enough achievement in the field of technology. Okay, they had also knowledge about nomadic cattle breeding because they dealt with cattle and livestock. So they had knowledge about cattle breeding. Okay, they were successful in creating a unique culture. Okay, because of their knowledge, because of how they advanced in technology, they developed a unique culture of their own. Okay. The Hunas, all right, which we learned about a little while ago, they were defeated in the 1st century AD. Okay, so the Hunas had earlier been successful in the 3rd century BC to control the region, right? In the 1st century AD, they were defeated by a Mongolian tribe named Xianbis. Okay. From the 1st century till the 12th century, a number of tribes established their dominance over this region of Great Steppe. They were Xianbis, who were of Mongol origin, and their rule lasted from 1st to the 3rd century. And there were also Niruna or Zhohinas, who ruled in the 4th century. The Turks, who ruled in the 6th to 8th century, Uyghur who ruled in the 8th century, Kyrgyz who ruled in the 9th century, and Khitans who ruled from 10th to 12th century. So you see how this area, vast area of the great steppes stretching from the Central Asian regions to the Korean Peninsula. This region was ruled by various tribes over the period of time. Okay, now during this time, a script of their own was developed, and this script was called Orkhon Enisil script, and this was similar to the runic script. Okay, the script with which they wrote. Now, during this period of conflict and dominance of one tribe and another replacement by another, there was a mixture of the cultures of Mongols and the Turkish. Okay, so there was a mixture or merging of Mongol and the Turkish speaking people. All right. Now, both sides, they had their customs, traditions, their cultural achievements. Now these were mixed together with each other and that influenced each other. Alright? The empire of one of the nomadic tribes, the Khitans, had special significance. It was important, okay, the Khitans' rule. The Khitans, a tribe of Mongolian origin, they established their sway over the great steppe in the 10th century. So the Khitans ruled the great steppes in the 10th century. They retreated to the Chinese territory, okay, and they retreated to the Chinese territory. They moved to the Chinese territory. They lost control over the nomadic Mongolian tribes. Okay, they lost their control over the nomadic Mongolian tribes because they retreated to the Chinese territory. Alright, so because they moved to the Chinese territory, they lost their hold over the nomadic Mongolian tribes. Now, this period gave to the Mongolian culture sophisticated military science, the veterinary science, and sophisticated agricultural science. So the Mongolian tribes also not only made achievements in the field of technology, but also in military science, also in veterinary science, also in agricultural science. Okay, so they improved and they progressed in these fields. Okay, and the evidence is that the Mongols had started to breed the best breeds of the horses. Okay, Mongols were very popular for their horses because they breeded the best breeds of horses. All right. Now, trade became very important for these nomadic Mongolian tribes. Okay. Let's see why. The social and political organization of the nomadic and agrarian economies were very different, but these two societies were quite familiar with each other. The Mongols belonged to the steppe lands. Their limited sources drove them to trade and barter with the neighbors in China. Okay, it was beneficial to both the parties. Agricultural produce and iron utensils from China were exchanged for horses, furs, and game trapped in steppes with the Mongols. Now, Mongols, we know, were quite advanced in technology in agricultural sciences, etc., and they were the best breeders of horses, right? But we also know that they suffered from lack of resources. They did not have enough resources, enough food, enough clothes, enough materials, right? So they turned to their neighbors, the Chinese. Okay, the neighbors in China. Now these neighbors, they cultivated their land, which mean they had grains, okay, surplus amount of grains, which could be supplied or traded or sold to the nomadic tribes. Okay, so because of the fact that the Mongolian tribes had scarcity of resources, that fact drove them to trade. Because of that, they were forced to trade, okay, with their neighbors, in China. And how did they trade? They traded their horses, they traded their animal produce like furs, like dairy, skin, etc., okay, leather, etc., with the neighboring, with the neighbors, okay, with the people from the neighboring areas, for in exchange for iron utensils, in exchange for grains, etc. Okay, so this is why trade became very important for the Mongols. Okay. Now the commercial relationships, the trade relationships between Mongols and China were not without tension. Okay, there was conflict between China and Mongols. Okay, so although we know that they had established trade relations, but that relations did not go without any conflict between them. Okay, because these two groups unhesitantly used military pressure to make more profits. So both of these parties wanted to make more profits, and they were using their military power, military strength to make that profit more and more. Okay. When the Mongol lineages allied, they forced their Chinese neighbors to offer better trade ties in favor of outright plunder. So over time what happened, the Mongol tribes, they came together, okay, they formed allies with the other tribes, okay, who lived in great steppe, and with the support of these allied tribes, the Mongols were able to push back the Chinese neighbors, okay, and also establish better trade relations for the benefit of the Mongols. Okay. But this relationship also changed when the Mongols became a little weak and distracted with other campaigns or with other events. Okay, the Chinese took advantage of these events and the weaknesses of the Mongols, and they assert their influence in the steppe. So taking advantage of the influence and taking advantage of the weakness of the Mongols, China took advantage and then again asserted their influence over the areas of the Mongol tribes. Okay. Now these wars, these conflicts between the neighbors and the Mongols, okay, they continued for a long time, and these wars were called frontier wars. Okay, and they were quite destructive. They destroyed the lives of the people. They destroyed properties. They ruined cities. They also destroyed agriculture, etc. Okay, so it was quite destructive. It was not good. Okay. Mongols, on the other hand, could retreat away from the area of conflict with some losses. Throughout the history, China suffered much due to the nomadic attacks. Now, because of these frontier wars, of course, China suffered as well as the Mongols suffered because it destroyed the properties, the lives of people and animals on both sides. Okay, but China suffered much more due to this nomadic attacks or frontier wars. Okay, so because of this reason, they had to build fortifications to protect their country. They had to build forts or they had to build walls in order to stop these nomadic tribes coming in to attack China. Okay, this had to be done. Okay, so starting from the 3rd century BC, these fortifications started to be built. Okay, so that fortification came to be known as the Great Wall of China. So if you go to China today, we can still see that wall which was built along the frontier of China with the Mongolian tribes to stop and to protect China from the attacks of these nomads. Okay, so here is a map, and in this map you can see the area that was under the rule of the nomadic Mongolian tribes. So, or we can also say nomadic empire. All right, under the Mongolian tribes. Okay, so you can see how the extent of this territory. All right, it stretched from Central Asia to East Asia. All right, it was so vast. Now, as we know, the Mongols originally were confederation of tribes in combination with Tartar, Kiraith, Margit, and Naiman confederations. So the Mongols were basically a confederation, a union of different tribes who had come together. Okay, so they were all different tribes who were brought together in a confederation. Okay, so the Mongols were basically a confederation of tribes. The Mongols were only a division of what is called the Mongol nation. Okay, so Mongols were only one division. Alright, the great statesman or the leader Genghis Khan unified the Mongol people by absorbing other confederation into his one unit, and the word Mongol came to be known for the entire people. So it was under the leadership of Genghis Khan, who belonged to the Mongol tribe, that he unified all these different tribes who formed the confederation earlier. Okay, and as they united all these different tribes into one under him. Okay, then it came to be known as the Mongols. Okay, it came to be known as the Mongol tribe, or it came to be known as a Mongol, used for all the people that was under his rule. Okay, under his command. Now, when Genghis Khan came to power, he began to unify the Mongol state. Right? He began to bring together all the different tribes into one under his rule. So under his leadership, Mongols created the second largest empire in the world history. It was under Genghis Khan that the Mongols were able to establish the second largest empire in the world history. At its height, the Mongol Empire extended from Korea to Hungary and included most of the lands between Afghanistan, Georgia, Armenia, Russia, Persia, China, and much of the Middle East. Alright, so you can imagine that the vast tract of land which came under the control of the Mongol Empire, or the Mongol state, which formed the nomadic empire. Okay. Now, what is interesting for us is to know how the Mongols were able to make such a remarkable achievements. Okay, how did they come to know as the world conqueror? Okay, how did Genghis Khan do that? All right. Now, in the pre-industrial age of poor means of communication, what skills were used by Mongols to administer and control such vast empire? So the first question is, how were the Mongols successful in making such a remarkable achievement of bringing such a vast tract of area of land under its control and become the world conqueror? And then, what were the skills, or how were the Mongols able to administer and control such a vast empire? What was its administration like? And how did Genghis Khan deal with the diverse social religious groups that inhabited in his vast dominion. So as you can see, his empire, the Mongol Empire, extended from Korea to Hungary. Okay, and it included Afghanistan, Georgia, Armenia, Russia, Persia, China, and much of the Middle East. So this means that there were people belonging to different religious faith, different culture, speaking different languages. So how did Genghis Khan deal with all these people speaking different languages, bearing different cultural customs, traditions? Having different knowledge of polity, economy, and society. How did Genghis Khan deal with all of these? Okay, so that is what we are going to learn next. Now, Genghis Khan's original name was Temujin. Okay, he was born in the year 1162 AD and he was a son of a minor clan leader. He was not a son of a ruler. He was a son of a small clan leader. Okay. When he was 12 years old, his father was poisoned by an enemy. Okay. As a result of his father passing away, he spent his childhood in misery, in utter misery. Okay. He did not have a good childhood. He did not live with riches and privileges. Okay. He had to overcome different struggles, okay, and he mastered with these struggles, with how he overcame the struggles, he mastered complicated art of tribal politics. Okay, he learned about the tribal politics, about the politics that was practiced by the leaders of different tribes. He learned the art of the tribal politics. Okay, and he realized that such tribal politics was a result of a mixture of loyalty, cunning, and ruthless treachery, as well as physical strength. So all these elements were very important for the tribal politics. Okay, and as he learned all these, as he mastered the tribal politics, he was successful in using the same skill, okay, to crush his rivals, all the rival tribal people, okay, or leaders. So Genghis Khan, after he finally crushed his rivals, he was able to combine the various Mongol-speaking tribes into a single unit. He unified all the tribes into one. Okay. In 1206, an assembly of Mongol chieftains proclaimed him the supreme head of his people with the title Genghis Khan, which meant supreme ruler. So in 1206, he was proclaimed the leader, the supreme leader of the Mongols, and he was given the title Genghis Khan, which meant supreme ruler. Okay. Now, although Genghis Khan was able to unite all the tribes, okay, there was one drawback that he suffered from. He did not have manpower like the other nomad conquerors, okay, like the Turks. He did not have enough army. He did not have enough men to fight, okay. So that was one of the drawback that he suffered from. Genghis Khan had the maximum number of warriors or army men that he had was 1,25,000 tribesmen only. Okay, despite the limited number of his army, despite the limited resources that he had, he did not stop aspiring to become the ruler of the universe. He aspired. He wanted to become the ruler not only of Mongolia, not only of the great steppes, but of the entire universe. All right. Now Genghis Khan, however, had a built-in advantage enjoyed by all nomad warriors. But Genghis Khan, he introduced many good policies, many good measures, which were enjoyed by all the warriors, all the people that were part of his administration and that they lived and those who lived in his under his rule. Okay. The daily life of the nomad warriors was a continued rehearsal of campaign or operations. So the army was to practice and rehearse fighting campaign operations daily on a daily basis. Okay. And these tribesmen, because of their training, they were capable of riding for several days and nights without taking any break and without taking enough food. Okay, so that was the strength of his warriors. Okay, they carried with them leather bags for water, and that same leather bag could be inflated and used in swimming across the rivers. Okay, so they were quite advanced in the tools they used in fighting. Okay, they lived in the countryside, but if necessary, they drank the blood of their horses and the milk of their mares. Okay, so when they required, they could eat whatever was available, even if it was from the horses that they rode. Okay, from the very boyhood, they were skilled hunters. They were also trained as skilled hunters. They could hunt. Okay, and the tactic, the very favorite tactic used in fighting by these warriors of Genghis Khan was called feigned fight. Okay, now what was this feigned fight? So during the war, the warriors would flee for days. They would run away for days, and then by that they would allow their enemies to pursue them, to chase them, to go after them. But as the enemies chased them and went after them, these Mongolian warriors would suddenly appear from nowhere and ambush the enemy and crush them. Okay, so this was the kind of tactics used by the Genghis Khan's warriors. Okay, and another type of tactics that they used was tying of branches of trees on the tails of their horses. Now, why they tied branches of trees on the tails of their horses? Because by that, as the horse rode, then the branches would create dust. Okay, and that would give impression to the enemy that the Mongolian warriors were coming with a large force of army. Okay, so that kind of tactics was used to crush the enemies. All right. The basic weapon of the Mongol warriors was a compound large bow, and this compound large bow was more powerful than the English long bow. Okay, now with this fearful weapon, the Mongol horsemen were able to carry a supply of 30 weapons and shoot all 30 at full gallop. So with this large compound bow, they were able to carry other 30, a supply of 30 weapons, okay, say for example arrows, and then shoot all of them as they galloped, as the horse galloped. Okay, they were that skilled, and the compound large bow was light and very effective. Okay, now they used other equipments as well, and those were steel helmet, light body armor, a saber, sometimes lance. Okay, saber is a sword, like a sword. Lance is like a spear with a hook, and a mace. Okay, so swords and daggers and spears, helmets, and light body armor was part of the warriors' outfit and equipments that they used. Okay, the Mongol horses grazed only on the open range. Okay, with no shelter, they were provided, the horses would be provided no shelter during long severe winter, and also no hay or grains to feed them. So this tough treatment or the harsh climatic conditions made the horses also very tough and adaptable, okay, to kind of weather that was there. Okay, now Genghis Khan further strengthened his military forces by adding new military skills and new equipments which he learned mostly from the Chinese. Okay, So because of the knowledge that he acquired from his neighbors, the Chinese, he could apply those knowledge in strengthening, in bettering the military skills of his warriors, and in also improving the equipments of the army. All right. The Mongols, apart from being very strong soldiers and skilled soldiers, they were also masters of espionage and psychological war. So espionage is basically spying. Okay, they were very good at spying, and they were also good at psychological war. Okay, psychological war means they use tactics, okay, to crush the enemy, like how we learned about the feint tactics, right? How they pretended that they had large force of army by tying just a branch of a tree on the tail of their horses. Okay, so such kind of psychological war, a psychological warfare was used by the Mongols, and they were masters of it. Okay. So before starting a campaign or starting a war, the Mongols, they collected all possible information about the enemy, the enemy's roads, rivers, fortifications, their political and economic conditions. Okay, they used people, they sent their agents, they sent their people to spread stories about how large the Mongol forces were, how big the Mongol forces were, and how strong and how fearless they were. Okay, and how useless it would be for the enemies to fight them. So such stories were spread among the enemies. Okay, and these stories, after they were spread, the enemies would become scared to fight the Mongols, right? So that would cause the defeat of the enemies, all right? So in course of the campaign, they used terror tactics to demonstrate the enemy. Okay, so we already know how they used pretentious measures to show that they had large army, or how they used tactics to disappear and then surprisingly ambush the enemy, right? All those tactics were used. Now, the prisoner of war, if the enemies were captured, okay, so they were again recruited, or they were again made to fight. Okay, but now they would fight against their own friends because they were now part of the Mongol army. So they would be forced to attack their own people. So that is how the prisoners of war were also recruited, or were also incorporated into the Mongol army. Okay. So because of these unique strategies of the Mongols, of Genghis Khan, he was able to overcome his nomadic neighbors before invading the great empires. Okay, so he was able to crush his neighbors very easily. Okay, he was familiar with the traditional Chinese strategy of divide and rule as well. Okay, he learned from Chinese many things which he applied into his own military strategies. Okay, so what he did was he also applied this Chinese strategy of divide and rule, and this was used to destroy the nomad chieftains. Okay, before he could attack them, before he could crush them. So such strategies, application of tactics, helped Genghis Khan overcome its neighbors and expand its territories. Okay. This map here shows the different campaigns that the Mongols fought. Okay, the campaigns that were led. So you can see they went from Karakoram to the southeast China. Okay. They also went as far as to Eastern Europe. They went to Mediterranean region. They also went to Middle East. All right. So all these campaigns, this map shows the different campaigns led by the Mongols. All right. Now, the political condition of Asia was also favorable for Genghis Khan to start campaign of conquest. Now, when Genghis Khan started his conquests, okay, in different parts of his empire, and also towards Europe, the political condition of Asia was quite favorable. Okay, it was suitable. It suited the mission or the interest or the aim of Genghis Khan. Okay, at that time, China was divided into three fragments. Okay, so the north was ruled by the Qin dynasty, the south was ruled by the Sui, and the northwest was ruled by the Tibetan Tanguts. Okay, thus there was no strong and unified China. This gave advantage to Genghis Khan, right? Now, if you look at Eurasia, Europe, and West Asia, the balance of power was also quite disturbed. Eurasia was also quite weak. Okay, so to the west of China was the state of Karakhital, based on oasis cities such as Bukhara and Samarkand. Beyond that, on the Oxus River, was the Muslim kingdom of Khwarezm, and still further west, the Abbasid Caliphate, Baghdad, both had lost their glory. So all these different empires, all these different regions, okay, in Eurasia and China, they were quite weak. Okay, and they did not hold strong positions to counter or to prevent Genghis Khan's campaigns. Okay, so this proved very favorable for his campaigns, the campaigns that he led. Okay, Genghis Khan first subjugated or brought under his rule, under his control, Sia, okay, between 1205 AD and 1209 AD, and it forced it to be a tributary state. Now, it was not directly brought under the control, although it was under Genghis Khan, but it was made a tributary state. Okay, it was to provide tribute or some fee, okay, some kind of resources to Genghis Khan annually. All right. In 1211 AD, Genghis Khan attacked North China. Okay, first overrunning the region north of the Great Wall and penetrated to the Yellow River Plain. So in 1211 AD, he penetrated and attacked China. By 1215 AD, Genghis Khan had occupied and plundered Peking. Okay, so by 1215, in just 4 years, he had plundered and occupied Peking, okay, the capital city. He had also gained the services of the Chinese, who knew how to besiege cities, and others who knew how to administer and establish agricultural societies. So as he conquered these territories, the Chinese territories, now he gained or he took advantage of the knowledge of the Chinese. So their services were used, the Chinese people were used for gaining these informations, knowledge about administration, about agriculture, etc. Okay, according to his overall plan, Genghis now turned to the surrounding nomadic territories. So after China, he turned to the surrounding nomadic territories. He occupied Manchuria in 1216 AD, Korea in 1218 AD, and Karakhital in 1219, okay, in the following year. So by the conquest, he had reached the frontiers of Khorasan, which he overran in 1219 to 1221 AD. He looted and plundered rich and prosperous cities such as Bukhara, Samarkand, and Balak, and ruthlessly killed their inhabitants. The only exceptions were the skilled artisans whom he sent to Mongolia. Okay, so you can see how he led campaigns not only in China but beyond China, in Central Asia, okay, in Eastern Europe. All right, and as they did, as he conquered all these areas and expanded his territories, he made use of the knowledge, the skills of the people of these areas, okay? And he also killed and plundered the cities, the popular and rich cities of these areas, okay? Now Genghis Khan was still not satisfied with his conquests, okay, with what he had been able to conquer. Now he wanted more. Okay, so he wanted more expansion. He wanted more areas to conquer. So as a result of that, his troops now advanced to Caucasus, where they defeated the Georgians. Okay, and then they advanced to Ukraine. Okay, and the Mongols crushed a numerically far superior army of 80,000 Russians in 1223 AD. Okay, but he had to return. Genghis Khan during these campaigns, okay, in Caucasus, in Ukraine, okay, he had to return to Mongolia to start another campaign against the Chinese kingdom of Sisia, okay, who had risen in revolt against his rule. Okay, so he was not finished in Ukraine. He had to return back to Mongolia to fight against the Chinese kingdom Sisia, because they had that kingdom had been revolting, had started a rebellion against him. Okay, now this was the last expedition of Genghis Khan. Okay, and he died very soon after 1227 AD. All right. Now, for 20 years, Genghis Khan was known as the Asia's mightiest warrior. Okay, for 20 years, Genghis Khan was known as the Asia's mightiest warrior, subjugated and terrified, brought under his control areas that extended from Korea to southern Russia. Okay, it is estimated that his conquest cost the lives of 5 million people. As a result of these conquests, 5 million people have been estimated to have been killed by Genghis Khan and his troops. It is said that the capture of Nishapur in 1220 AD, Genghis Khan had massacred 17,47,000 people. Okay, the toll of life, the people that were killed in Herat in 1222 AD was 16 lakhs of people, and at Baghdad 8 lakhs people were killed. Okay, at Tun in Khuhistan province 12,000 individuals were executed. So his reputation was further sullied by association with atrocities committed by his successors. So his reputation was also now associated with being a ruler who killed large number of people. Okay, and that reputation continued because his successors, the rulers who came after Genghis Khan, they continued such executions of people as they led their campaigns and raids and battles. Okay, it is said that his grandson built a pyramid out of the skulls of the thousands of people or thousands of scholars that were killed in Baghdad. Okay, so that was the kind of killings or executions of people that took place during the rule of the Mongols. Okay, but now historians, they try to portray Genghis Khan as a wise leader and a philosopher. So he did what he had to as he led his campaigns throughout Asia and Europe and Middle East. But despite that, he is also considered by the historians as a wise leader and also a philosopher. They hold that though the process of cruelties committed by the Mongols was not pleasant, the cruelties were not pleasant at all. Yet the regime or the rule of Genghis Khan was not bad at all. Okay, Genghis Khan consolidated his rule by employing cooperative local officials. Okay, so as he brought new territories, new countries within his territory and under his rule, he did not remove the government. He did not remove the officials from those areas. He continued to appoint the local officials of that area. Okay, as a result of that, he was able to consolidate, make his empire more strong, okay, more powerful. All right. So he also kept the local infrastructure largely intact. He did not destroy the administrative system of these new territories. He kept them intact. Okay. He also enforced a legal code which was liberal. Okay, his rules, his laws were quite liberal. It was not conservative. Okay, it was quite liberal. And he offered a new deal. Okay, a scheme called New Deal, which was basically to take care of the poor people. Okay, so he made sure that everyone the poor also had better or the poor people also had a better lifestyle. Okay, that their needs were fulfilled. Okay, and the laws were also not that strict and not conservative. Okay, Khan also abolished taxes on the priests of all religions. Despite being a follower of Buddhism, okay, he did not tax the people from other religious faiths, and he removed or abolished the taxes which were to be paid by priests of all the religions. Okay. More controversial and progressive for the day, Khan declared that all children were legitimate. And one of the most important contribution is that Genghis Khan declared all children to be legitimate. Okay, so the children of prostitutes, of concubines, okay, they were considered legitimate, and they were also allowed to have right to inheritance. Okay, they could also get a share of the property. Khan also allowed women to be educated. He banned all the efforts which made women to cover their heads. Okay, so his rules and policies were quite progressive and encouraged women folk. Okay, the circumstances, however, of Genghis Khan's deaths are unknown. Okay, some people say that he fell from his horse and killed as a result of that fall. Others say that the fall took place during a hunt, or it happened in the heat of a battle. So nobody knows how he actually died. Some say he fell off a horse, some say he fell off a horse during a hunt, and others say he fell off a horse during a battle. Okay? Now let us look at what were the reasons which made the Mongols under Genghis Khan so successful in their campaigns and in expanding its territory to such great extent? So one of the cause was training. We know that the Mongol warriors, they were trained at very young age. They were trained to be good soldiers, good riders. They were also trained to be good hunters. Okay, both the Mongol horses and the men, they were tough. Okay, they were sturdy and they were agile. They were quite flexible, and they could endure harsh weather conditions, and they could also ride for a long time without much food. Okay. They trained continuously in rotations, formations, and diversionary facts. Okay, so training was one of the reasons. Second was discipline. Okay, great discipline was followed by the warriors of Genghis Khan. Okay, and that discipline was same for everybody, whether it be generals to the lowest rank of the soldiers. Okay, and everybody, every soldier, every officer, every generals would get same amount of looted booty. Okay, the looted booty which was acquired from the conquest, that was distributed equally among all the warriors. Okay, the third cause was archery. The Mongol army used a compound bow, okay, of which was made up of wood, sinew, and horn, and were primarily mounted archers. There were many techniques used by the archers in the battlefields, such as riding to encircle the army, then raining arrows at him and killing many men and horses at the same time, and that too from a distance. Okay, so archery was another reason for the success of the Mongol campaigns. Okay, because the archers used compound large bow. This was very light and effective. Apart from that, the archers used very interesting techniques and strategies, okay, which resulted in their success in the campaigns. Okay,